My name is Sahil Piyarali, and I am a 25-year-old neurodiverse young professional based out of Seattle. I currently work in technology consulting right now, and I've first started thinking about male contraception. It's been an ongoing thought of mine throughout my 20s, as I've started dating and obviously been more sexually active, but but while I don't want a kid right now in my life, I can't say there'd be the same sentiments would be had 10 to 15 years down the line. And so the lack of a long term yet reversible birth control that males are able to take on their end has been on my mind for quite a bit, which is kind of what interested me and what led me to kind of coming across MCI and being interested in joining the board.
Fantastic. And that's awesome that you touched upon kind of seeking out information because, one of the things the marketing and communications director for MCI.
Of course.
What I was always struck with, and when I started about 4 years ago with the organization, is how little information is actually out there. And then the information that you do find sometimes, especially news articles, really kind of misrepresents the reality of male birth control with this kind of like, oh, coming soon, we're weeks away.
I've seen the same thing. Yes.
Yeah. So I wonder what were some of the online or just general resources that you kind of took a look at to educate yourself about male birth control?
There was some. I think RISUG has a site of its own, if I'm not mistaken, right? So I looked at that one. There were some, like a couple of universities published some studies, I think, on it, and so I looked at it. But mainly I was more kind of, I think I was frustrated at some of the way some of the general public framed the situation as well. The common sentiment, I think, is in popular culture and the kind of the court of public opinion is, okay, if you don't want kids, go and get a vasectomy. Well, look, I think there's a lot of misinformation on that. I think is also what kind of drove me, especially with the whole with the Roe versus Wade situation, right? Like it's understandable that people would look to, okay, what are the ways men can control it, and a vasectomy is absolutely an important tool in that kind of toolkit, in as we move into a post Roe versus Wade world. But I think the common sentiment is, well, vasectomies are reversible. Well, yeah, if you want to pay $6,000 for a 50% chance of it, then sure. But I think I can't tell you how many people have said that, right? And that, I don't want to say grinds my gears, because it's not the right way to say it, but it does irk me a little bit, because I think the some people don't acknowledge that there is this missing kind of component into what, as far as birth control is concerned, that is, again, a long-term reversible solution that men can use on their end, right? I guess is kind of what I think is missing. And I think that kind of misinformation or missing sentiment or misinformation, I think, is kind of what has bothered me as well. So
gotcha. Yeah, totally. And it's been shocking for us, post the Supreme Court's announcement that they've overturned Roe v. Wade, which is shocking in and of itself.
Yeah.
But then to see this coupled with the number of especially young men going for vasectomy and seeing, there's an organization called World Vasectomy Day that we work a lot with, and some of the doctors there were saying that normally they see 5 or 6 patients a day for consultations, and now they're getting like 40 or 50 people reaching out saying, hey, I want this, and with that same notion, like, well, I'll just get it reversed, and it's super simple, right? And you're like, no.
And I've had two, I mean, from my personal end, I've had 2 consultations with 2 urologists, right, on it, and so I did explore it, right? But again, like I said, I believe for the stage of life I'm in right now, it just doesn't make sense.
And you've touched upon, and you mentioned RISIG, and then you've now twice talked about long-acting reversible methods. It's always interesting to hear what different people their preferences in terms of, you know, the method of
Yeah.
action, how long, duration
Yeah.
of efficacy, things like that. For you individually, Sahil, what sort of method do you think is the most appealing for your needs?
I mean, I'm always a person that likes if possible, likes a method that is kind of set it and forget it, right? Which, I mean, so which means that, while I would absolutely take a pill if it was available, right? If it was the only option available, I would prefer some sort of, like I've heard that there's some sort of gel, right? That was in testing at some point. That would be appealing to me. I would probably be a preferred method, but something where like the less frequently it has to be kind of applied or set or taken or whatever, the better, just because of human nature, right? It's not because, hey, I don't want to take a pill because XYZ. It's just the human nature, right? And I have plenty of female friends who have expressed similar sentiments from when they take a pill, right, for birth control. So I don't think what I'm expressing is fairly out there, but that's yeah. I mean, I would prefer some sort of gel over a pill, but yeah, again, at this point, beggars can't be choosers is also kind of the approach I have to that as well. So
Yeah, that's and unfortunately, it's so wild working in this field to be able to say, like, here we are in 2022 and our options are condoms and vasectomy
yeah, that's
still.
which is
That's
not,
it.
yeah,
I mean, are you kidding me? So you mentioned the gel, which is ongoing, and they just actually had I can file after this, I'll send it to you. There was
sure,
a publication kind of giving an update because it's been 1 year since they launched the clinical studies, and
right.
it's been going extremely well, and they're heading into, I think, stage 3 now. But that's a hormonal method. And then Reisig being a non-hormonal method. Is there, some people are adamant that they wouldn't want a hormonal method. Some people are kind of indifferent. I guess, does it matter to you?
I mean, I guess, I guess maybe a non-hormonal method would be more ideal, right? But again, like I said, like I think I'm willing to deal with a number of side effects just in order to have more control over the situation from my end, right? And not trying to make sure I be careful about how I say that, but I think it's I've thought a lot about what the benefits and trade-offs I'm willing to take in that respect, and I think quite a few certain side effects that would come from a hormonal method would be better for me than potentially ending up with an unplanned kid at my age, right? So I have to look at what the benefits and costs are of the whole thing. So again, like I said, my answer is, again, beggars can't be choosers. So
Yeah, no, I hear you. I hear you. Yeah, it's funny. That's I'm very similar to you in that I would much rather have like a long acting method. I mean, I'm 45 years old, so I'm kind of at the end of my reproductive journey. My wife and I are
right.
not going to have kids, so but I'm the same way. I struggle to remember to take my daily multivitamin, for God's sake. So, and I can only imagine how scary it'd be to forget your birth control pill.
Yeah.
Um, one thing that amazes me, especially with, like, we have a youth advisory board, and we work with a lot of student volunteers, interns, fellows, and things like that. And it just seems like younger, your generation and younger generations are so plugged in and so interested in male contraception. Can you talk a little bit, like, what are your conversations like with your male friends or female friends, or what sort of, can you give us a window into like what conversations are taking place amongst young people vis-a-vis contraception?
Yeah, I think I think, to be honest, among a lot of my male friends, there's not really this okay, I think a lot of my male friends are more trusting of condoms than I am. Is what I will put. I think they're like, okay, I mean, we'll just use a condom and see what happens. Right? I think a lot of my friends is risk tolerance. My male friends' risk tolerance on pregnancy, that sort of thing, are higher than I am than mine is. And so they plan accordingly. But I think I have had conversations with male friends since the whole Roe versus Wade situation happened, right? And I think we agree that they're we want that there to be more responsibility on the men's end as well. So while my male friends haven't been as receptive to it in the past, I think Roe versus Wade has changed that. And with my friends who are women, they actually, they say we usually don't talk to men about birth control because I mean a lot of my female friends know my sentiments and and have I've talked to them about it, because they give me advice on how to approach these conversations with people I'm dating, and they say, yeah, I mean my female friends are like, yeah, we wish more men were like you, basically, kind of in that sort of word, right? And I think but I think again there's sort of an imbalance between the way the genders communicate, right? It's and I think it's important to understand each other's challenges in this respect, right? I think there are definitely some women who maybe don't understand as much what it's like to not have control over over birth control and have and the anxiety that's related to that. Obviously it pales in comparison to what the anxiety would be, having to actually carry a pregnancy you don't want, but there's still anxiety involved. So I think the sometimes that people don't, you have to come to an understanding with each other, right? That both, I mean, there are issues for both genders in this space, in this space with what's going on. And I think it's important to hear each other out in that sense, because one can't relate to another on a bodily sense, right? I can't relate to what taking birth control is like right now from a woman, because I don't take it, right? Or you know what I mean? But I think I've tried to kind of relate to my female friends, but I've also tried to talk to my male friends and kind of have an understanding of why why we are where we are and what we're trying to do about it. So
the two biggest things that we always hear, and it's the two things we always try and have to message against, is this notion that men aren't interested in birth control methods for themselves, and that female partners in a heterosexual relationship would not trust their male partners to take birth control. Mm-hmm. What do you think about both of those? And yeah, I guess just what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, again, I think every person's different, so I can't say that that there aren't men who aren't interested in it, or there are females who don't trust their but I'd say like that's I go with it, generalizations. I think the option should be there for those who want it, even if like, again, 80% of men don't want it, and 80% of women don't trust their partners to take birth control, which I don't think is true. But again, I'm just giving an example, right? I still think the option should be there for those who want it, right? I don't think just because there's a certain sentiment or stereotype. I think it's about having options out there for those who want it, right? And I don't think that's too much to ask personally, but yeah, I mean, I think both those statements are incredibly, again, they're generalizations that are, again, built upon decades and decades of social stereotypes and conditioning, and don't really represent what the totality of the world. But again, even regardless of whether those statements exist or not, those generalizations exist or not, the option should be there for those who want it.
We work very closely with the research community. So one thing that whenever we do these interviews, I always love to give people the opportunity of, like, imagine you're speaking to someone who is developing a male birth control pill. What are some things that you would want them to keep in mind in terms of designing a birth control method for users? From a user's perspective, what are some things that you would want them to think about, consider, or just incorporate in their research activities?
One thing I've thought about is like exactly like what what I guess what the science is as far as like how what happens with how much sperm is actually in is actually in the liquid in semen when this goes through. Like, would it need to be checked regularly? Because I know with vasectomies, you have to check it regularly. Like at least once a year. Usually, they recommend you go and get a sample done. Would that have to be done with a birth control pill? And if so, how often? Right? Like what exactly is the effectivity? Or is there possible there's a small amount still in there? Right? And it's fine if there is, right? Because again, something's better than nothing. But I think knowing, what exactly the science is behind how the sperm is, doesn't end up being in the semen and all that. I think is understanding what from a user perspective, right? I work in technology, right? So again, it's going from a kind of from taking business needs and translating them into a technological solution, right? This is kind of the same thing where you've got the user needs, right? Which is, but then what is the solution behind that? Understanding how to kind of bridge those gaps and kind of have the whatever's done scientifically and explained in a very concise manner from a user perspective. That is I think something that I would hope that the research community considers as it develops, as it continues to develop this sort of thing. Because I think it's important for the user to be able to know what exactly is going on, so they can appropriately consider that.
Thinking about whether it's 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 50 years from now, what is your hope for the future with respect to birth control generally, male birth control specifically? And then the second part of that being, what do you think it will take to make that dream a reality?
That's a good question. So I think my hope is that there is an option out there, a long-term reversible option out there for men that's fairly reliable, and that is available for those who want it. I think that's my hope. I wish that was the case tomorrow. I wish that was the case in 2 weeks. You know what I mean? Let alone 5-10 years, right? I think to make that dream a reality, it would, unfortunately, I feel like it would take a lot of it would take a lot of deconditioning from society, and that kind of societal deconditioning and that sort of again, like I said, that takes decades, decades and centuries to undo. I do have hope that once folks of my, in general, that once I think the folks in my generation, right, are a little more, again, we're growing up in a different society, right? And I think there is a chance that once folks in my generation are in leadership positions, C-suite positions, executive offices, running the country, that I think that sort of deconditioning would kind of begin, right? Just because, again, it's, I'm 25 in 2022, right? So I think it's once I'm, when people in my generation are 50, 75, that's when that societal deconditioning will begin. And that's when I think we might see, I would hope, a little more progress in that area. But again, that's dependent, and I can't say, but I think it would just take a fair amount of deconditioning to make that dream a reality, just because there's so much antiquated thinking and a lack of critical thinking as well, I think, going on across the decision makers who are responsible for this sort of thing.
In a perfect world, everyone would be as engaged and interested in contraception and male birth control as you are, right? But unfortunately, not many people are.
Mm-hmm.
So if you could kind of wave a magic wand and just impart some information or some knowledge to all people, what would you want everyone out there to know about either contraception generally or male contraception specifically?
What I would want everybody to know is that, having to take a pill and deal with side effects, or having to, right? It's better than bringing a child into the world that is not that you're not ready for, right? And I think, unfortunately, what it might take for a lot of men to get interested in it is for them to deal with an unplanned pregnancy or an unplanned child. That's what I've noticed tends to get them more interested in this the most, right? I think that, is so I think more kind of that kind of realization that happens after in unplanned pregnancy or something like that. Like, I think you would wish you impart that before it happens. At the end of the day, sexual activity is supposed to be fun. You're supposed to be connecting with a partner and having fun, right? And but this sort of thing, like this sort of dichotomy in this world that we live in, has kind of taken sexual activity and made it a lot more complicated and controversial and just not as fun as it was designed to be. And I think that's a loss for a lot of people in the world, especially in my generation, you know?